Yeah, we're going to play an investigation, Alexi, and so investigations in Skull and Bones are really a way to tell a story through a series of steps. The player kind of follows a trail of something that they think is going to be interesting and likely going to lead to some kind of treasure or some kind of score. But it also tells a story about our factions and our world, and we do that by finding, for example, messages in bottles, scraps of lost journals, sometimes talking to different characters in the world, and through that we were able to tell a story.
All right, cool. So I'm gonna pick up the first clue of this investigation. I'm gonna read it out, and then we'll find out a bit more. We'll talk about it a little bit together.
Sure.
All hail Queen Alice for the mighty victory over our treasonous brother and King Wenye. The throne of great Ukuta is now fortified against foreign invaders, and our alliance with the Sultanate of Soha help ensure the prosperity of the Confederation of Ungwana. The Queen shall award a bountiful sum for information on the capture of renegade Mwenye, who escaped the sword of justice together with a band of traitors, and made off with the royal crown of Ukuta, rightfully belonging to Queen Alice. The thieves and traitors were seen in several villages within the realm, including Bandar. By royal decree, all aiders and abettors shall be killed. Bless her majesty!
All right. So that's the first clue, and basically what's happening there is a little bit of a fight between brother and sister. Both of them believe that they're the rightful heir to the throne. But the brother basically ran away with the crown, right? So for us as pirates, we're not really interested in taking sides. We're not really interested in who's right or who's wrong. What we are interested in, however, is the mention of that crown and potential treasure waiting for us.
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
So what we're going to do first, the first clue is basically telling us that we need to find out where the brother went. He's been sighted in the Bandari settlement, so we're going to be sailing towards that destination. But before we do that, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the region we're in and how does it fit with our world context?
Well, so in the world context, this is the golden age of piracy, and so this game is a historical fiction, and so we're really basing a lot of our choices in the game on being inspired by the region of the Indian Ocean and the factions that can be found there at that time. And during this time period, there is a desire from the West for all the luxurious goods that were discovered here by the West, discovered from their point of view, and and there was a kind of a battle for who would have supremacy over those goods. And of course, that also leads to battles with the local factions, and it's really the mega corporations from the West stealing from the local factions to feed those new addictions in the West.
Cool.
And so there we see the dawn of the modern economy. Yeah.
All right, very cool. Nice little introduction there. So because we know where we're going, it's a bit of a distance to sail. So I've now traveled to another outpost, and maybe you can tell us a bit more about the role of outposts in the game.
Yeah, so outposts are really places to explore, find lore. From a narrative point of view, there's always lore to be found in outposts, but more than that, they're also places to trade, to pick up contracts, to cash in contracts, to sometimes pay off factions if you have an aggro with a specific faction.
It's also a place you can kind of meet other players and socialize with other players as well, right?
Of course.
Damn, fully multiplayer.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So now we know that our next destination is going to be that Bannery settlement. I'm going to talk about it a bit later as we get closer to it. But our objective is going to be to plunder that settlement to find the next clue, right?
Yes.
But for now, as we're sailing, maybe there's more you can tell us about the exact region we're in and the regions of Skull and Bones in general.
Yeah, so we're in the coast of Africa region here, and as you can see from the landscape, it's a bit of a arid landscape compared to some of the others in the game. And here, there's two major factions. There's the Confederation of Ungwana, who are really more the local faction who've historically been here, and they're a nomadic faction and quite aggressive faction in terms of the game. But the thing about the people from the Confederation of Ungwana is that they're nomadic partially by circumstances, and part of those circumstances is the fact that the Company Royale has moved into the location, and The Company Royale is really a mega corporation from France, and they're the colonial power who has disrupted the lives of the Confederation of Iguana. And there's a whole backstory and quite a bit of lore that can build up that sort of relationship.
Yeah, so one of the cool things about all this as well is that as we're sailing through and we see other ships passing us, the more you play the game, the more you find out that these ships actually have a lot of elements on them that are giving you information, right? First of all, you can see the equipments they have. So the ships we just passed, for example, they were equipped with a lot of cargo, but also the sails and the emblems they have will tell you which faction do they belong to and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, of course. So there's visual identifiers. There's all kinds of things that really help bring authenticity to the different factions in the game, whether it's visual, linguistic, you name it.
So a lot of work went into like making sure that when you're sailing through the coast of Africa, you feel that you're actually on the coast of Africa.
Absolutely.
There's also a lot of other elements like the wildlife, the vegetation, all of these things that make you really feel like you are actually sailing the coast of Africa, which is very nice.
Yeah, and if you want, there is wildlife in the waters that can be hunted by players, but not with the ships that we're sailing right now. Of course, Skull and Bones has all different kinds of ships, and you're encouraged to use those different ships in different ways. Some are better for combat, some are better for fast navigation, some for carrying large loads. And of course, there are very small ships that can go through narrow waterways and are useful for essentially hunting water-based animals. And so that is an opportunity that we could explore in the coast of Africa, but because I think we're trying to complete our investigation, we'll have to do that next time.
So I know that there's actually a lot of rivers to explore. Luckily for us, the rivers we're in now are large enough for us to sail with those rather large ships.
Yep.
But like you said, like some rivers you're gonna have to basically switch to a smaller ship, which might not be as well equipped. But that'll be the only way to get some of the resources that the region has to offer, right?
Yep. And so it pays to have a varied fleet of ships, it's fair to say.
Yes. All right. So we're going to get closer to that settlement in just a little bit. There's a couple of information that we need to keep in mind when we get closer. First of all, so far nobody's really bothering about us because we're just not being very aggressive, right? But the moment we attack the settlement, that's going to change, obviously.
Yeah.
That settlement belongs to the local faction. But we're not here to actually plunder any resources. We're here to find the clue. So what we're going to do before we start the plundering is we are going to plan our escape route to make sure that we don't get into too much trouble.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm almost there now. But essentially, yeah, that's the key thing about Skull and Bones. When you want to engage the combat, depending on your objective, you want to make sure you're prepared for it. So if you want to plunder all the way, then you need to make sure you're ready for a long fight. On the other hand, if you're just looking for one specific item, then you want to plan an escape and you want to make sure that you can run away without getting too much heat. Because the way the plunder feature works is that the longer the fight goes on, the harder it gets, the more there's going to be reinforcements, and the more aggressive these reinforcements are going to get.
But if I've learned anything playing the game, things will go wrong. So let's see what can happen.
So hopefully we'll make it alive. Alright, so I'm going to drop anchor now, open up my map, and I'm going to set my escape route for that shipwreck on the far east. And whenever we're ready, let's get started.
I'm ready.
All right, let's go.
Let's do this. So as you can see here, a bunch of our crew are jumping overboard to essentially enter the settlement and begin the plundering action. And so the fantasy here is as we're out here fighting and holding our ground, they're in the settlement scampering around, stealing whatever they can get their hands on and looking for the thing that in this case we're looking for, which is the next clue in our investigation. And as you can see, those different stops across the top of the screen of what will happen during the plundering action if we survive is they will start sending out what they find while our crew is in there on small ships for us to pick up. So if they do their job right, we will get our clue in the first package.
Yeah.
And then we can make our escape. Obviously, the longer the battle goes on, the more at risk we're at here in this kind of confined space.
Yeah, but that's also how you get the highest rewards, right?
Exactly. So if you can stick it out all the way to the end, of course, you're going to plunder a heck of a lot. But As you can see here, we are facing stiff competition.
Yeah, so my strategy usually when we plunder settlement is the beginning's pretty chill, I want to say, all things considered.
Yep.
So what I try to do is I try to damage the tower first before all the big reinforcements come in. But in that case, we're getting a lot of heat from those flamethrowers.
Yes,
So
it's not super chill at the moment,
Yes.
it turns out. And the tower is also, I see that you're taking some heavy hits from the tower.
yeah. And that's the thing, like, depending on the enemy you're facing, obviously you can see that there's different weak spots you can hit for extra damage, but
Oh,
they're also
yeah.
going to have different kind of weapons who might inflict different kind of damage on your ship, so you need to be kind of prepared for that as well.
Yes. Having a well-rounded strategy never hurts because, as we mentioned, things will go wrong.
Yes.
And it is quite chaotic at the moment.
Alright,
But
I think we're almost there. Yeah, I just
Yes.
got the clue, so now we can run away
let's do it.
before all the big trouble comes.
Perfect.
So if you just follow me, I know where we're going.
Okay.
Alright, so like you can see on the screen, we're leaving the plunder area now, so that means any potential loot, extra loot that we could have gotten will be forfeited at this point.
Oh boy.
But we don't care because we have what we need.
Yeah, our escape is not yet guaranteed, though.
Yes.
That's fair to say.
And there's, like you were saying before, there's the Company Royale fighting here with local factions, so you can see some of that conflict happening right here.
Yeah, and that's part of the living world of Skull and Bones. And in this case, I think it's going to work to our advantage here because the Confederation of Iguana is going to be sort of torn about who to aggro more, us or the Company Royale.
Alright, so far so good. I'm gonna use a repair kit just to fix my ship a little bit.
Yep.
I've seen better days. How's it looking for you? Are you able to make it out alive?
Yeah, I'm going to be okay. I'm kind of running close to this Company Royale ship, so I'm going to be curious to see. They don't seem to have any issue with us, but hopefully. Oh yeah. Yep. So they're under attack from the Confederation of Iguana, which is great news.
Cool.
Because that means I'm getting away.
It's quite ironic that we're being saved by the same people that we just attacked.
Yes.
But I think it's looking good, man. At least on my side, it's looking like it's gonna get quiet soon.
Nice. Passing a shipwreck here.
Yeah, there's a lot of flamethrower action behind you. Alright, so I'm gonna drop anchor on here, and I'm gonna start reading the next clue.
The Confederation of Ungwana is in upheaval. King Mwenye has landed in Bandari Harbor. Though still wearing his crown, he is but a shell of the man he once was. Queen Halisi has taken the throne and strengthened her alliances within the realm. With Unyenye, Kevu, and desperation, he pleads for help. To see such groveling from royalty grieves me. Halisi's spies are everywhere. Those who do not pledge allegiance are being seized and executed. Prudence is vital. For this reason, I had to turn away the beleaguered king and beseech him to return to Great Uguta and ask for reconciliation. His sister might be merciful. My pleas fell on deaf ears. Mwenye has disagreed. The dethroned king has departed to gather allies to the north and defy the usurper queen. Undeterred, Mwenye sails towards his fate. May peace be with him. Word goes around that Mwenye's ship has vanished to south of Jiwe settlement. I fear the worst. Lost too, sadly, is the crown of Uguta. But for the best, perhaps, as the usurper queen is cursed to rule without the ancestral crown. Pigo to her tyranny.
So yeah, the fight between sister and brother is not looking good, to be honest. It looks like they still they can't find an agreement basically.
Yeah.
So King Winnie ran away with the crown. The queen, the sister queen is basically destined to rule without a crown. But for our interest, we've been told to look for the next clue at a shipwreck next to Jiwe. So that's where we're going to sail now.
All right.
The other thing I noticed when I was reading the clue is that there's actually some graphics that you can display that shows the clue written in a language that I don't really understand or can't read. So maybe you can tell us more about this.
Yeah, I mean, we are obviously inspired by the people of the region, and so we've worked really closely with historians as well as language and culture experts to make sure that we're being accurate and being taking that inspiration as far as we can in terms of showing the authenticity that comes from the different factions in this region, or I should say from portraying the different factions in this region.
Mm-hmm. And another thing that I like a lot about, talking about regional factions and regional cultures, is the shanties. I'm gonna play one right now, so maybe you can talk to us a bit more about shanties in the game.
Yeah, so the way I see it is we really have 3 different types of shanties in the game. Of course, we have your classic pirate shanties that I think people come to expect, myself included. But we also have some language-specific shanties, like we were talking about, some that are not translated and are kept in the language of the local factions, which I think is very cool and really exciting. And in addition to that, we also have certain shanties that are really specific to the world lore of our game. So shanties about the characters in our game, about some of the legendary kingpins, about some of the myths and the overall fantasy of our game.
Nice, very nice. So yeah, as we setting a bit, we can enjoy the different sceneries and changing the lighting as we get closer to nighttime. And one thing I like as well when I'm sailing and there's not too much combat or action going on is taking advantage of the different cameras that we have in our game. So
yeah, absolutely.
Really
I mean, if you take the time to make your ship look awesome, you want to celebrate it
Exactly.
when you have a moment,
I mean, that's the key thing about a pirate, right? You take pride into making your ship impressive and good looking.
Exactly. You just like your hand is going to be encrusted with rings. You also got to have your ship encrusted with cool stuff.
Yes.
And
then the other thing that I find are both quite fun, but also very distracting is obviously the world is really big, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you set sail thinking, okay, I'm gonna go look for something specific, and then as you set sail, you look around and you see one thing interesting, and if you like me, you'll get tempted to find out what it is, and then you lose focus basically, and you get distracted by other things, and then you forget why you were at sea in the first place.
But that's all right. We're happy to have players get lost in our world. That's part of the goal, and I think that was part of what it was like to be a pirate, was to
I guess so, yeah.
see opportunities and seize them in the moment. And so
Yeah, but in our case, we can't get distracted because our time is limited.
We're on a mission.
Yes, and I'm now arriving to that shipwreck we were looking for.
Let's do it.
So I'm just gonna get a little closer, drop anchor, and then I'll read the next clue.
Great.
All right.
Dear sister, your betrayal is complete. Here I lie bleeding from mortal wounds and contemplating the afterlife at the table of our ancestors. All that remains of my domain is a dhow and some meager rations. Your venom poisons our lands. Your cruelty has trampled the hopes of even my most loyal followers who abandoned me at the first chance. Off the coast of Bandari, we were boarded by pirates, led by one captain, Freeman, who seduced my crew with promises of freedom from servitude in a secret haven, Lanitra. Let them go. I'd rather die fighting as a king, noble in his cause, than ever live a moment as a common rogue. Alas, without a crew, my ship ran aground, and I was injured. At least Nima and Azizi remain at my side, true servants to the end. Even now, they tell me to stop fighting, as it is time to join my ancestors at Pilatun. The next world beckons me. They will offer to carry me, but I will walk myself into the center of the sacred stone circles. Crown of Okuta shall never be yours. remains mine until
Okay, so it looks like the story is taking quite a dramatic turn towards the end. There's a couple of things I've learned from that clue, actually. The first one is after years of working in that game, I finally found out how to pronounce the how. I didn't know it was pronounced that way. But the other thing is, so like the story said, basically the King Weenie had a very unfortunate encounter. He met a certain Captain Freeman, who then convinced his entire crew to basically abandon him and live free in a place called Lanitra.
Yeah.
So maybe you can tell us more about this Freeman and
Yeah,
Lanitra.
so Captain Freeman is really a mythical character. I like to say he's part of the foundational myth of our world. And so Captain Freeman has a story that you're going to put together in the game by doing all these different investigations. You'll get little snippets about Captain Freeman from every investigation to put together a full picture of who he was. And one thing that is known widely is that he was part of what was called at the time, or what we call the heist of the century, meaning that he took part in the biggest score any pirate had ever done in our world by doing a massive score against the Dutch Merchant Company. And so he was one of the also founding members of this sort of pirate den, borderline pirate paradise called Lanitra. And in Lanitra, it was very much an egalitarian, almost democratic society where pirates supported each other, worked together, really began to work against the mega corporations in a quite coordinated way. And it included even some of the other characters that we'll meet in our game, like one of our major characters, John Skurlock, for example, was an inhabitant of Lanitra. But tragically, Lanitra was destroyed and being attacked by the Company Royale and the DMC, the Dutch Merchant Company, given the events of the heist of the century and some of the other things that Captain Freeman and his ilk got up to. And so really that whole idea of having this like pirate utopia has been destroyed in the mythology of our game. And what we're left with now is a world that is much more cutthroat, much more dog eat dog. It is a much harsher and grittier pirate world than that mythical pirate past that some of the characters in our world can remember.
There's no more safe haven for us to live our life free.
And Freeman himself is sort of a mystery lost to time that hopefully we can learn more about by doing those investigations.
All right, so I know there's a lot more to that story, and we'll probably leave that for players to find out when they finally get to play our game in open beta or launch.
Absolutely.
But one thing I need you to tell me, and I don't know if you can answer that question, was Freeman a good guy or a bad guy?
I think, as far as pirates go, he was a good guy. He did believe in the sort of utopian vision of Lanitra, and he did want to do right by the little guy, so to speak. And his goal was really to take issue with the mega corporations.
Fair enough. But I guess in our game, it's all a matter of perspective, right? You can, depending on how you feel and which side you want to be on, there's no real good guy.
No, I mean, even the best good guy is still going to have gray area to take issue with. I mean, pirates are pirates, right?
Yeah, and it's a difficult world, right? So being 100% good in that world will probably not get you very far.
Exactly right.
So while we're talking, we just arrived at our final destination, our third outpost called the Pilotom. I'm going to show you a little bit how that place looks because it looks quite amazing. But I also I would like to ask you a bit more about NPCs in the game in general and like different vendors and...
Yeah, so we have vendors or hawkers, you might call them, who are the people who are really going to sell you all the different things in the world that you are able to buy and consume, and there is many. I mean, when it comes to ingredients for upgrading your ship, things to feed your crew, things for upgrading your weapons, upgrading your appearance, all those kinds of things you're going to get through hawkers, as well as the ability to take on new contracts, new opportunities, maybe even pay off factions. Like, for example, if we had an ongoing feud with the Confederation of Iguana based on our plunder earlier, we could potentially pay off somebody at a outpost like this who's related to that faction. But in addition to those characters, we also have pirate kingpins in our world. And so I mentioned John Skurlock a minute ago. He's one of the first pirate kingpins that players are going to meet, and he really stands as an example of the kind of kingpin the player is going to want to become.
Cool. So I like that you said he's one of the first, because I know there's more. I know we can't talk about it yet, but I know there's more. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I also believe that when you start engaging with those kingpins, they will look at you based on your reputation. They will look at you based on your actions, and depending on that, you might get different contracts.
Absolutely. I mean, the whole world of Skull and Bones is about infamy, and so the player really starts as an outcast, and they want to rise and become an infamous kingpin. And so those contracts and those relationships you're going to build with other kingpins are going to grow and change based on your infamy in the world. And actually, one of the things I'm really proud of is the whole world of Skull and Bones is very reactive. So the actions the player does, the infamy they gain, the player the other characters in the world really recognize it and respond to that.
Cool. Another thing I really like about Outposts in general is that sometimes you're just walking around, not really sure. You're not necessarily looking for anything specific. In our case, we are looking for something specific. I'm just, enjoying the scenery a little bit. But then every now and then you pass by something and you hear weird sounds. And I know that there's a lot of stuff in the game out there, and I've asked around, like, what's going on, and nobody really knows.
Well, there are certainly surprises, treasures, tricks, and everything to be found in these areas, in these outposts. And I will spoil nothing.
Yeah, no, and there's a lot to discover. I played the game quite a lot myself, and there's a lot of outposts I still haven't fully explored. So all that being said, I still haven't found this treasure. So from the clue, if I remember correctly, it said that the treasure is buried in a stone circle grave kind of thing. So I'm gonna try to find this.
Sure.
Full spoiler, I actually know where it is, so I know where I'm going, but I'm just gonna pretend I don't know, right?
Right.
But yeah, it's pretty. It can be hard to find if you don't know what you're looking for. Once you know what you're looking for, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, and it's important to pay close attention to the clues, actually, for investigations. Investigations are not meant to be straightforward. They're meant to be something that we have to.
There's not going to be a big marker telling you where to go. So
that's right.
All right, so I think I found the grave now, and I can dig up the treasure chest. So I'll just be waiting for you a little bit, and then we'll dig it out. All right, let's dig it out. I think.
Nice. Perfect.
So yeah, as you can see, I found the treasure, I dug it out, and that should give us the last piece of information for investigation, which will allow us to complete the investigation. So I'm going to read that last bit of info so that we get the kind of a closure to the story.
Sheltered from the tyrannical eye of the usurper queen by the guardian spirit of our ancestors. At the behest of our king, we take the crown of Rukuta and depart to the north, far from the queen's malevolence. I pray that King Mwenye will be honored by our ancestors. Azizi, loyal servant of His Majesty Mwenye, the eternal Mtuala of the great Ukuta.
Alright, so the sad news here is that there will be no crown for us. As we learned from that last bit of info, the crown was taken away by the servants of Mwinye, and I don't think there's ever going to be a chance for us to find it. Who knows?
No.
The good news is we did get a little reward for us for completing the investigation. But before I equip it on my ship, can you tell us a bit more about other investigations in the game?
Yeah, well, and like we mentioned, we do also, one of the things we did get is a piece of a larger story about Yuriko Freeman. So all the other investigations are going to obviously give some promise of treasure and reward, but also will fill in some more of the gaps about Yuriko Freeman and his story. And because we know Freeman did the heist of the century, and no one knows for sure whatever happened to the treasure that was taken in that heist, there's some hope that by completing all the investigations that we may be the ones who ultimately find it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Exciting. So that reward I just equipped on my ship is a vanity item, is a new figurehead, so I can show it